The more I think about the um, arbitrary nature of democracy and the fact that it is a choice. The world is a sort of anarchic playground in a way. Any system of government can spring upon the rough wilderness, but we maintain and we have institutions that promote democracy. Okay, and it's seen as very dangerous to criticize um, to criticize democracy. Although there are people who do that, with varying degrees of influence or success. But anyways, my point is, I'm seeing more frequently the profundity of majority rule. I see it in everything that we do in this country. Um, and I think I'm a bit optimistic that, I mean, you can criticize it, and you might even be able to promote or secure something else. You have to workshop it before you move into the political space, but um, it should be totally viable. I think a lot of people are just sort of going through their lives. They're people aren't so happy today. Life is a drag, they go through it. Um, and they I think people want something new and refreshing if it isn't obviously dangerous or nasty. You understand? So a lot of the movements that have come out that are democracy critical and received any kind of influence on the public consciousness, they've been extremely bigoted and hateful movements. And there are ways in which you can criticize democracy without necessarily endorsing those ideas. Maybe probably don't need to spell it out for you. I don't feel like doing it anyways. Um, but yeah, there's just I mean, essentially, to me, it maybe doesn't fully boil down to this, but it does boil down in a way um, to beauty. There is a lack of beauty. There's a lack of complexity in the world today. The mind of the public, because it is in many ways a lowest common denominator, it just is. It's not very sophisticated. It cannot be particularly sharp. It has to be somewhat vague and round. You understand, inclusive. You can't have a very particular sharp message that is only for a minority of human beings to even perceive it or recognize its value. These sorts of messages that are totally capable of organizing a political society, they don't exactly make it into the public discourse in a democracy. Um, it's just not at the popular level. So when you look at people, for example, who get involved in our politics, a lot of them come out of elite institutions, which are exclusive places. Um, and they're going to know, they're going to gain a sense of what it's like to communicate with elites, with a privileged minority, and then they go out into the world, and they have to know how to. I don't want to manipulate is maybe too strong a word, but they have to manage everybody who's outside of that space while coordinating with elite interests, and that's not a fully cynical thing. It's just the fact that um, say the wealthy and powerful in this country have a lot of stake in how it operates. They can create companies, they can create jobs, can collect data that is useful for um, political and governmental administration. So that's what I mean by coordination. It can veer into territory that is more cynical and less pragmatic than what I just described. But I don't mean to say all coordination with elites and with non-elites is cynical. It would be very reductive and stupid to say. But when they do this, there's a sacrifice that they make to their values and their inner voice in some regard. I mean, they no longer can fully commit to the more exclusive aspect about themselves. You understand, which might be more authentic because it is more so the product of an individual. It isn't an individual contorting himself or herself to make room for extraneous interests. You understand? There's a like a selling out people do to the majority to the majority. This is typically not how we think about selling out, I suppose. You think every person is supposed to start as regular, happy, well socialized, Joe Schmo, and when they sell out, they're selling out for elite interests. That's the common um, myth surrounding what selling out is. I don't know if that's so accurate. It's maybe accurate in some cases, but one thing is to be successful in this country, you cut off and you dull your edges. You turn yourself into an accessible person, right? You commercialize yourself in a way. You turn yourself into a product where there's some demand. You go after a market, and that market can be the majority. You can sell yourself out to the majority. It's not necessarily, that you become more exclusive. It can be that you become more inclusive, and there's something artificial about that. Pardon me. Um, so this is a big part of the game, and in a bourgeois democratic era where modernism has been going on for like over a century at this point, the whole world is very deeply bourgeoisified. It is this mass global middle class of passive consumers, and then a system of democracy for managing them and their interests. And then on top of it, a sort of commercial oligarchy and institutions that basically uphold political ideals that are not so disruptive for the interests of the commercial classes, at least the elite of the commercial classes. And I guess you can go in a direction of incorporating financiers in here somewhere. But I don't wish to be, purely throwing in tropes or something like that. I actually haven't. This is on me. I haven't spent much time thinking about, the financial class in the country. You think you can rope them up with any commercial class? It's just the plutocratic interests seem to be quite uniform, and the cultural effect, regardless, is rather the same. There's an effect of a very sort of vulgar materialism that the society absorbs and takes on, um, and I don't have enough experience with the upper classes to know particularly how culture is either salvaged or worsened by their own activity, be it through an externalized effect that they have, and be it through their own internal domain. I would imagine that there's plenty of cultivated, wealthy people who have an interest in the finer things in life and maybe respect those things and have graceful tastes. But there also might be ways in which they fail to live up to that, and they become, they're sort of wealthy plutocrats, or certainly that's to say nothing of the external effect that they might have on society due to their job, and whatever ideology they export. And I would just be speculating further if I commented more on that. Anyways, my point is, um, yeah, this is it's sort of a you have that loose political form. Just we have general terms of democracy. This is how we're going to sublimate discourse. Okay, it's through representatives, and through public debate, with all the messiness that entails, um, and uh, and then there's a economic system that happens in a it is conjoined to that political system. These are rather you know structureless insofar as they just have the effect of a flat, bland effect. Maybe I phrase that in a redundant manner. It's like the classes that exist are not so deep. The ideas people carry are sort of similar. It's just some people are more intricate in their opinions. They know more history. They're better educated than others. But there are not really these gaping tiers of and different categories of life that people embody. Everything's a sort of messy spectrum. And the greatest gulf is simply the amount of numbers contained in your bank account, but even the way in which that manifests um, in a person's nature, right? What that turns a person into is noticeable, but not extreme. That is to say, a billionaire will be probably different from a non-billionaire in many ways, but it's not so extreme as like a king. You understand back in before the modern parliamentary and republican revolutions. We don't societally have these really extreme and extraordinary categories, and the classes are quite open because they are relatively undefined. You can one day decide to commit yourself to being an artist. You can find the tools to do it, the support structure. Then you can change your mind, be a chef, change your mind, be a lawyer. You maybe can't do that forever and ever, but you can do that. And if you really wanted to, you can always do it. It's never too late to change your path, right? So that's what I mean to say. There's a loose form. You can basically do, whatever you want, so long as you can do it, and so long as you don't deviate from the law. Right? Even still, you can do whatever the hell you want, but it's harder. Still, you can always, I guess, de facto do anything, but de jure, uh, you can't. And that being said, there's still many ways a person can invent a life um, within this bland, mediocre swamp. Um, I'm going to let myself kind of stop, think, reflect a little bit before I proceed. This should be a refreshing change of pace in a society where, I'm supposed to keep your attention if I show up on a screen. Um, no, we'll do this naturally. Um, I have an anxiety surrounding the rule of the majority. I have an anxiety surrounding this sellout quality of government in the United States, where we do have to sacrifice things and give things up in order to speak towards the masses. This causes me anxiety. I view it as tyrannical and oppressive. It's. I understand there are, you know, far more explicit examples of tyranny and oppression than the mere existence of a democracy. That's an unpopular view, but again, of course, it's unpopular. It is by nature unpopular. It is anti-popular. You understand? Um, and so, again, think of the layers in that little like disclaimer I just provided to you. Why did I have to make that disclaimer? Because we live under the tyranny of majority opinion. That's why I have to say, well, I know it's unpopular, but at that point you have to rationalize it, right? Uh oh, you're saying something unpopular. Well, now the onus is on you to ensure that a mob shouldn't come and kill you. I mean, great. So um, yeah, it just would be nice to have a state somewhere in the world that is left unbothered and by the international system and is not constructed with majority opinion in mind. Um, I guess the examples that we have on offer at present are not particularly good. There's the very much beloved and stable um, regime in Iran. There's the similarly wonderful North Korean state. There's Russia. Although, sorry, no, Russia is very popular um, among Russians. My bad. That's a democracy. Um, yeah, I understand. I'm not exactly in good company, but the broad principle of a non-democratic state is uh, capable of manifesting in various ways. Um, you know, we don't have to be held to we, we we could create a state that breaks away from the contemporary examples, um, but it wouldn't be easy, and there'd be a lot of questions. And the additional, um, wow, I'm stumbling over myself now. But the other thing a person could do if they're not so enthusiastic about majority opinion, rather than constructing a totally new government, uh, would be creating a parallel society, a parallel structure of existence. But that's really hard. That's so hard. And this is an era, as I've said, this is an era where all communication is popular in public typically. Um, you know, it's very hard to network without using something like the internet. It's just hard, and you're always being spied on. You're always being audited. You're always being watched by democracies. They're always snooping, trying to find deviance. You understand? Um, that's the world we're in, and so at least we can speak about it, right? You can use the First Amendment that they so generously give us to speak and to contemplate and ruminate. It's not very productive. Some people would say, I mean, it is productive, but what I mean is I'm being a little facetious here. Um, it's you're supposed to shut up and just go along with it, right? Why do you sit here and speculate about alternative political structures? Well, you can do that, especially if you're trained to do that. If you study political theory and political philosophy and history, you actually can do that. And individuals who have been passionate about constructing new societies have have existed. They've existed in recent history. A ton of anti-colonial thinkers are some obvious examples, although they've all been ostensibly pro-democratic, although in practice not really. But um, this is a real thing that people can do. So I'm going to be talking in circles if I keep going. So let's end this.